Welcome back to the Purple and
Yeah, I mean,
You guys, does Michelle do the same thing?
It was number one. I started laughing yesterday, and I thought, oh, someone's going to call in and mention it. And then when you brought it up earlier, it just made me chuckle all over again because the thought of
just getting sick of being taxed to death. Come on.
Yeah.
Jay Thomas Show.
At Sirius at Fargo, your journey to calm begins in a quiet, comfortable space free from noise, light, and outside stress. During your introduction session, we will capture a baseline of your brain's activity and identify where it's holding on to stress. Siriset is the next best step for your sleep, stress, and mental clarity. Call 701-566-5231 or visit Siriset.com to schedule.
If you look closely, you can start to see it, feel it, maybe even smell it a little bit. Football is back in the air. Yeah, the days are getting a little shorter, the buzz is getting a little louder, and the stories are getting a little more frequent across the sports wire. Yes, football season's fast approaching, and the Minnesota Vikings are back in training camp getting ready for a brand new season. Last year was a fun one and completely unexpected. Sam Darnold went from the scrap heap to the penthouse. The defense got every bit of juice out of the roster, and the Vikings won 14 games. What does the new season hold? Well, we're going to find out very soon. Hi again, everybody. Steve Hallstrom here with our Viking season preview, the Purple and Gold preseason special. It's brought to you by BalanceCPA. More than just accountants, they're trusted business partners committed to your success. ND Estate Services. Say goodbye to unnecessary taxes, avoid probate, and make sure your family's future is secure. ATI Diesel, your diesel truck experts, and Premier Building Systems, family owned with years of experience. In the next 90 minutes, we'll get a training camp report from our guys, James and Jace from the WDAY sports team. We'll check in with one of the guys who spends more time around the Minnesota Vikings than just about any other media member, Jim Rich, the sports director at Fox 9 TV in Minneapolis. We'll get a look at the Green Bay Packers, the hated rivals, with Ross Uglum from Packer Report. Plus, he'll give us the skinny on some former Bison players who are suiting up in the NFL this season. And we'll be joined by Devin Fry from Valley News Live TV for some predictions on the Viking season and how the playoffs might shake down. Who might win it all this year? We're going to have a great time here over these next 90 minutes or so. Let's start by taking a look back at what happened last year for the Minnesota Vikings. Well, things started out with a bang. 5 straight wins out of the gate, including a road win at the New York Giants and then a home win against the San Francisco 49ers. And it was then that you started to realize this team might have something going for it. And then there was a win against Houston, at Green Bay, 31-29, and a win in London against the New York Jets, and the Vikings were 5-0. 2 losses followed. Detroit at home, 31-29, and then at the Los Angeles Rams, 30-20. But the Vikings rebounded with 9 straight wins there. They beat Indianapolis at home, at Jacksonville, at Tennessee, at Chicago, home to Arizona, home to Atlanta, home to Chicago, at Seattle, and then home to Green Bay. That set up a regular season finale in Detroit where the Vikings had the opportunity to cap off this remarkable magic carpet ride of a season with a win of the division, but they were not able to beat Detroit. The Lions handed it to them on that day, 31-9. Sam Darnold came back to earth after having a really good run up until that point. The Vikings ended the season 14-3. And then it was time for the playoffs. Los Angeles Rams, that was the opponent that the Vikings would travel to. They had to move their operation because of some wildfires over to Phoenix, playing in the Cardinals' home stadium. It all was setting up pretty good for the Vikings. The team in the Rams, it was a little bit out of its element, playing them in the playoffs. Vikings had a very good season to be confident about, but it did not go very well. 27-9 was the final score, and Sam Darnold struggled again for the second straight week, and probably that's a big reason that he's not back with the team this year. And so that's how the season ended. Overall, the Minnesota Vikings finished second in the NFC North. Detroit was at 15-2. Then there was the Vikings at 14-3. The Green Bay Packers followed at 11-6. The Chicago Bears, behind their rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, came in 5-12. That's how the division finished up in 2024. As far as how the playoffs finished up in 2024, well, the Rams didn't go much further. They lost to the Philadelphia Eagles the next week. Actually, the Eagles beat the Packers to get there. The Rams beat the Vikings to get to the game with the Eagles, and the Rams lost 28-22. The Eagles ran all over the Washington Commanders 55-23 in the NFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl. In the AFC side of things, the Kansas City Chiefs were the number 1 seed, and they were able to beat the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills in order to get to the championship game. And they lost in New Orleans to the Eagles by a score of 22, as the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs ended up beating the number 1 seed in the AFC by a score of 42-22. It was the Detroit Lions that were the number 1 seed out of the NFC last year, but they lost in their first game that they played in the playoffs, 45-31 to the upstart Washington Commanders and their fantastic rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels. So that's how the 2024 playoffs finished up with the Super Bowl. Taking a look at the schedule for the Minnesota Vikings here in this 2025 season, their preseason opener is only a little more than a week away. They'll take on the Houston Texans at US Bank Stadium Saturday, August 9th at 3 o'clock. They'll have another home game then the following week against the New England Patriots, a noon game on Saturday the 16th, before finishing up the preseason at Tennessee, taking on the Titans on Friday night, August 22nd. And then after a couple of weeks, they will gear up and get going in the regular season with the 2025 schedule. They will begin at Chicago on Monday night, so a Monday nighter at Chicago. J.J. McCarthy, the Vikings' new starting quarterback, is a Chicago area native, so there will be all kinds of drama and all kinds of storylines with the Vikings season opener. Minnesota then returns back home to take on Atlanta in the US Bank Stadium debut performance of the year. And you probably thought maybe about a year ago that you'd say Kirk Cousins in the Atlanta Falcons. However, the Falcons have a new starting quarterback, Michael Penix, in his second year, supplanted Kirk Cousins as the leader of the Falcons offense. And then the Vikings have another home game with Cincinnati in week 3. That should be a very good game. Cincinnati, a team that disappointed last year, although they lost a lot of close games. Still some very, very good offensive firepower there with the Bengals. That could be a high-scoring game on that particular week. And then the Vikings go overseas for a couple of games. They'll go to Ireland to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers on the 28th of September. That will be an 8:30 a.m. kickoff. And then they're going to go to London after that, 2 straight games in international territory. And they will play the Cleveland Browns then on Sunday, October 5th. And that's another 8:30 a.m. game. The Vikings then get a bye week, which is pretty big for them after having a couple of international games. Then they'll be able to come home and get their legs back under them before they get back to action. And boy, will they need to have their legs under them, because on Sunday, October 19th at noon, the Vikings will be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions. The Vikings then have 2 road games back-to-back at the Chargers and then at the Detroit Lions. They return home on November 9th to take on the Baltimore Ravens, which could be another really fun game. Another home game the week after that on the 16th of November against Chicago. And then on November 23rd, they're at Green Bay, followed by a game on the road at Seattle on November 30th. They'll have another really interesting home game the next week against the Washington Commanders, December 7th. Then they're at Dallas on December 14th, at the New York Giants on the 21st, and then they've got a Thursday game on Christmas Day at home to the Detroit Lions. So both teams will be having a short week. That'll be a 3:30 kickoff, and that could be a game with a lot of things riding on it with the NFC North. The Green Bay Packers will be the foe in the regular season finale, so back-to-back home games to finish the year against Detroit and Green Bay. Wow, is that going to be a fun way to finish the schedule? It is a very tough schedule. The Vikings have the tied for fifth toughest schedule in the NFL based on how teams did last year. Of course, you never quite know how teams are going to carry over one season to the next. What are some of the big questions for this team this year? Well, you have to start with the quarterback. J.J. McCarthy in his second year missed most of last year with a knee injury. Got that cleaned up. He's ready to go. And they didn't even bring in an experienced backup quarterback, really, that had, I guess, some big game experience and some experience in playoff situations to fill in if need be. There was a lot of talk about maybe Aaron Rodgers might be the backup quarterback, but the Vikings said, nope, we're going to go with J.J. McCarthy. How will he handle it? He's got a ton of weapons around him, a very good defense on the other side, but he's still got to be the one to pull the trigger. There are some new faces on defense as well. We'll be talking more about that here in just a moment. New faces on the offensive line as well. The Vikings are picked by most NFL experts to be somewhere around a top 10 team. In some power rankings, they are as high as 8, and in some they are as low as 15. But that is expected to be where the Vikings will finish this year as the experts take a look at them. The big story on defense is that defensive line, 2 new starters, Jonathan Allen at one end and Javon Hargrave at the other. After that, a lot of guys that have played a fair amount of football for the Vikings. So there's a lot to figure out here. And the Vikings will begin, as I mentioned, starting to work their way through all of those questions. And will J.J. McCarthy play some preseason snaps? Probably a pretty good bet, starting a week from Saturday at home to the Houston Texans. All right, when we come back, our guys, James and Jace, back from training camp. They'll give you an eyewitness report when we come back on the Purple and Gold preseason special.
Welcome back to the Purple and Gold preseason special. Big Game James McCarty with Jace Denman. We're going to do a few minutes of a segment breaking down our festivities and what we saw, sights and sounds of training camp and the excitement that we had seen over this past week as we get ready for. We're gearing up for that first preseason game, of course, and we're also gearing up for the new era of J.J. McCarty with the Minnesota Vikings. Looking forward to it. Steve taking this segment off. I don't think he's drinking. He could be. Who knows? Might crack a beer. You know, once the purple comes out, usually the case of beer comes with it because we're coping.
I was going to say, normally there's a lot of coping for a lot of fan bases, Vikings fans notorious for some big game losses that are heartbreakers still to this day. Well, I'm just pointing it out. You mentioned drinking and related to the Vikings. That's how it goes. But, James, we spent our time this past weekend down at Vikings Training Camp. You got a couple days in. I got a day in there. The biggest thing for me is obviously everybody comes out healthy. Mm-hmm. We've seen the minor injury from Justin Jefferson hamstring. I don't think we'll see him the rest of the preseason. We've talked previously on Primetime Sports. But then we had Josh Metellus. I believe you said he was back in action on the practice field on Monday.
He was on the practice field this past Monday, which was good to see. He had his helmet on, working through drills with the guys, contact, everything.
Everybody's back healthy, so that's the main thing right now. I think the most intriguing thing about Vikings training camp, we know the veterans that they've got both offensively and defensively, some new faces on that offensive line. But the thing we talked about last night on Primetime Sports, that quarterback room. I think that's, to me, the most intriguing storyline from the Vikings. You've got a rookie, more or less. I know he's a second-year player, but more or less a rookie coming in to start at that quarterback position. You've got some younger backup quarterbacks in Brett Rippon, in Sam Howell, and obviously you got the kid from New Hampshire via University of Minnesota, your Golden Gophers, Max Brosmer.
Yep.
Overall, tell the fans out there what you're expecting from that quarterback room this year.
For sure. Also, one offensive line thing of note that was official as of what was Wednesday of this week, so the 30th of July, Christian Darrisaw was on the practice field with what looked to be no limitations.
Oh, that's good.
Which is huge because he was a guy we had talked about. He wasn't on the PUP list going into training camp. He wasn't on the IR either. And so for all intents and purposes, he would have to be on the active roster if that were the case.
Right.
And so him being on the active roster, working through some bumps and bruises, we know that the roster is expanded right now for the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Until you get through each preseason game by game. So that's really, really awesome to see him out there. Of course, the blindside tackle for J.J. McCarty. We need to keep him upright. We know that his season ended after the first preseason game, his rookie year, because of just an unfortunate injury that had kind of lingered through his collegiate career. They thought was cleaned up, but wasn't fully cleaned up. But, so when we look at that quarterback room, it's something that we had talked about was, should there be a veteran presence in there, right? Because Sam Howell, 4-year pro, Brett Rippon, 7, I believe. 7-year pro. Brosmer's the rookie, even though he's the same age as JJ. Actually, he might be a few months older than JJ. And JJ's the starter right now in year 2. But I truly believe that there's no need to bring in any vets. I mean, if you get, like I had mentioned, if somehow, some way you have somebody fall to you, like a Russell Wilson on a vet minimum because he ends up getting cut by the Giants or something like that, that's one thing. But I don't think there's any need to put any more money into the quarterback room, even for an experienced veteran to be a backup, because you have that really good quarterback room with the coaches. You have Josh McCown, the quarterback's coach. You have Kevin O'Connell, the quarterback whisperer. I'm going to keep harping on it. When you have the Pasternaut come in and he plays with the Vikings and you're doing like the Sandlot, let me get a stick and let me draw up the routes in the sand, and you're winning ball games that way, that should just show you that you can win with anybody. He did it with Kirk Cousins. He did it with the Pasternaut. He did it with Sam Darnold last year, who just got a big contract. The first time in his career, he really was successful for more than one start at a time. Right. And now JJ, who is the first, legitimately in the 4 years of KOC, J.J. McCarty is the first quarterback that he handpicked. That's his guy, and I'm very excited to see the progressions. I thought the progressions were great. Like I was talking, I had mentioned earlier this week, I think what he's working on most right now in camp. Actually, I know for a fact. I was watching it in camp right this past week. I literally was watching it with my own eyes. Now, they limit you with the different video you can and can't take, so we don't have much of that video available for it, but you can see it on social media. Go to the Vikings site. You see the highlight tapes. You're going to see it on the 9th of August when the Vikings are hosting Houston, possibly.
Yeah.
If he gets a couple of drives or not.
Maybe he gets a series at least.
But he's working really hard on the professional throws. And what do I mean by that? It's, all right, throwing off of your front foot, throwing off your back foot. I need to put more air underneath this one so my receiver can go get it like Jetta's, right?
Yep.
I need to put a little bit more juice on it because I have a tight window to get it to T.J. Hawkinson on a crossing route between the linebacker and the defensive end that decided to drop into a flats coverage, right? Yeah. You're working on those throws. That line drive here, a little bit more air under it there. You're going to err on the side of putting it only where your receiver can get it, right? So if I end up erring and I'm throwing a fade route, you'd rather it go out of bounds than come up short and have that safety be able to make a play on it, right?
The coach made a comment, I believe, during his press conference on Saturday that JJ's working on those throws because the windows are much smaller in the professional game, because obviously you've got the wider hash mark in the college game. Those windows to throw to behind that linebacker layer there in the middle of the field, those are bigger windows. And now when he's in the pros, those windows shrink. You have to have, like you said, more air on this pass to get it to the outside. You've got to know the timing of it. You got to hit those windows more accurately. So
heck, we see it with guys like Patty Mahomes and Josh Allen. You know, there are times where you're scrambling and you're taking a tumble. You got to do that little sidearm thing like your Pat Neshek with the Twins in the mid-2000s that makes no sense that the ball got.
Well, sometimes you have to anticipate where your guy is going to be.
Exactly.
So that's chemistry with the receivers. He's working on that as well. Plus the fact, I think technically, James, in a worst-case scenario, you've got your quarterback coach. He was a backup quarterback probably just like 3 seasons ago. I think he could probably strap on the pads and throw a pass or two in an emergency scenario. And then, of course, your KOC, he's a former quarterback as well. So you got plenty of quarterback knowledge there heading into it. So it'll be interesting heading into in the preseason, into the regular season.
The other topic I wanted to get to make sure that we don't go over on our time, just defensively as a whole, right?
Yeah.
The Vikings in that 3-4 defense. We've seen it now for multiple seasons. You have everything, I mean, as good as it can, right? You're firing on all cylinders. A really great coaching staff there. You bring in some guys, right? Like Javon Hargrave, an edge or a defensive lineman from the Niners. You bring in Jonathan Allen, a guy that was a perennial, really a high-level defensive lineman when he was with Washington until injuries got to him the last couple of seasons. Harrison Phillips has been really an anchor in the middle side there. Jonathan Grenard's the guy that they basically, for lack of a better term, swapped out in free agency for Daniil Hunter a season or two ago now at this point. And you have these guys that are linebackers, edge rushers with your Dallas Turners, Ivan Pace Jr., Andrew Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman. Really high-level guys. The biggest question mark, though, I have, because I have faith in those guys in the front seven. I do. Right. Making things happen, making people uncomfortable, creating chaos. All of that I'm really confident in with them. I mean, talking with Levi Drake Rodriguez, who's just a depth piece. Right. In this defensive line room, he's a guy he thinks the world of Jonathan Allen coming in and Javon Hargrave as well. And the amount of things he's learned from Harrison Phillips the last season plus now at this point is really helping him progress. And so that gets me really confident and excited. But in the secondary, that's where I think you're gonna see some things, just because you have Harrison Smith on his last leg, 36 years old. Josh Metellus just got that 3-year extension for $36 million, guaranteed, 42 a possibility, right? And so he's kind of taken over that role as that leader defensively. They're kind of in that transition from Harry to Metellus. Your cornerbacks, you know that you have Byron Murphy Jr., who's incredible, right?
Yep.
You know you have Mekhi Blackman, who's off of that torn ACL, a guy who they had high hopes for a couple seasons ago. Jeff Okudah, who's a 3rd overall pick 6 years ago, I believe, if I remember right, out of Ohio State to Detroit. This is his 4th team in 4 years because he's battled injuries. Isaiah Rodgers is a guy that's trying to make the starting lineup. Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Dwight McLaughlin, all depth pieces on a pretty thin secondary. So I really do believe that the secondary staying healthy is huge, but as long as the front seven is healthy, that's going to go a long way in helping that secondary be as efficient as possible.
And that is with pretty much all the teams in the league. If you get pressure from your front seven, that will cover up some of the inefficiencies you have in that secondary. I know my favorite team, your favorite team, the Vikings, a little bit of question marks at cornerback. You got some decent safeties, but overall it's not the strongest group on the squad. So if that front seven, and the thing with the 3-4, James, we've learned over the years, with both of our teams switching to it, you have 4 pass rushers or 4 rushers on most most downs. You just don't know where that fourth guy is coming from. So it creates a lot of havoc, creates a lot of chaos up front. That can provide your secondary that other extra second or two that they don't have to provide coverage because the quarterback's under pressure. So obviously a big situation this year for that Vikings secondary. They need to take a step up and be able to provide that coverage in the secondary and allow those front seven to do their job and put pressure on the quarterback.
Very much so. And that final thing I note as we wrap up, I just want to give some love to the offensive line because I think it's going to be incredible this year. You've got two solidified guys when he's back 100% and Christian Darrisaw in the lineup, hopefully week one. Darrisaw on the blind side. Brian O'Neill has been with the team for 7-8 years at this point out of Pittsburgh. He's an incredible right tackle. You bring in two guys from Indianapolis, center Ryan Kelly, and then Will Fries as well, who's going to be lining up at the right guard, and then a national champion from Ohio State, that first-round pick, and Donovan Jackson at that left guard spot. So this is really going to be the first time that I can think of in probably close to 2 decades that this offensive line is as solidified as it can be, and I'm very excited for that because even of the 3 guys you brought in, 2 of them have played together for half a decade in Indianapolis, and they know each other's tendencies. That's going to be really huge for the Vikings as we move forward.
You need to have chemistry along that offensive line,
and I'm jacked up for it. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting closer to it, but we got to go to a break. What happens after this when we come back? Steve Hallstrom, he'll be back, and he's going to be joined by a buddy of his, Jim Rich, the sports director at Fox 9 Television in Minneapolis, talking some more Vikings football on the Purple and Gold preseason show.
All right, thank you very much, James. No, I was not drinking any beer, but I've got my purple jersey on, and I've got the Monster Ultraviolet, so I'm at least following the correct color scheme here. Want to say thanks to our sponsors, BalanceCPA, ND Estate Services, ATI Diesel, and Premier Building Systems, making tonight's broadcast possible. Coming up next, like James said, we'll take you to the sidelines for a chat with Jim Rich from Fox 9 Sports in Minneapolis. This is the Purple and Gold preseason special on WDAY, AM 970, FM 93.1, Fargo, Moorhead, USA. Welcome back to the Purple and Gold preseason special here on WDAY Radio, brought to you by BalanceCPA, ND Estate Services, ATI Diesel, and Premier Building Systems. Jim Rich is a sports director at Fox 9 TV in the Twin Cities, the flagship home on the TV side of the Minnesota Vikings, and he's always been good enough to give us a few minutes when we give a call. Jim, how are you doing today?
Real good, real good. We could do without this smoke here at training camp, but other than that, it has been pretty interesting to watch this team come together, what Kevin O'Connell's trying to do, and Brian Flores getting under the skin of J.J. McCarthy. It's been entertaining to this point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, entertaining is right. With the Minnesota Vikings, there's never a dull moment. And it is the team. I mean, we love the Wild. We love the Twins, Timberwolves when they're playing well. But there's something about the Minnesota Vikings. They are the team in Minnesota for sure, and everybody is wondering what the season is going to hold. I guess I'll start kind of big picture stuff, Jim. The NFC is very good, 6 or 7 teams in the top 10 of most power rankings in the NFL, and in the division, Detroit and Green Bay are very good. Chicago could be a team on the rise as well. Overall, as you look at this season, Jim, how do you think it might go for the Purple?
Well, you know what? Everybody is glowing about the team and J.J. McCarthy. And when we're out there, the players can't wait to tell you how much they love McCarthy's approach to what he is doing here. I mean, it's crazy. It's like, he can't do anything wrong. O'Connell is always praising him. His teammates are praising him. But I'm the one, right? Because we're Viking fans, we know what really goes on around here. And it just seems too good the way things are going right now for this youngster. Everything he says is great. He's very eloquent at the podium, says all the right things. And his teammates love his work ethic and how he's stayed here all off season. He didn't take off. He stayed at the facility, worked out with various guys, and flew around the country. He went down to Nashville and threw with T.J. Hawkinson and a couple other receivers. So he has done all the right things. But for me, I look at this Vikings team and I see, I hate to say it, 8 or 9 wins. I just think this schedule is so difficult this year. You look at it, and it's just a gauntlet of opponents. And you look at the division, like you said, usually when you're in this division, Detroit's 2 wins, Chicago's 2 wins, and you split with Green Bay. So you're always picking up 4 games without really showing much of an effort. But now the Bears are improved. The Lions, of course, had their tremendous season. Can they repeat without both of their coordinators? And now they lost their superstar center, Frank Ragnow. He retires. So they've got a lot of questions to answer. They may be down a step. And the Bears, they say all the right things, and they've got the right people, and they say that Williams is going to take the next step. I don't believe it till I see it. Still, I say this is going to be a very difficult season for the Vikings. How they handle the 2 weeks overseas, how they handle starting out on Monday Night Football, then Sunday Night Football. There's a lot of things in the air for O'Connell to navigate this time around.
No question about it. The strength of schedule, if you go by winning percentage of the opponents from last year, the Vikings are tied for the 5th toughest schedule in the league with Dallas and Green Bay. I guess the good news, though, Jim, if you take a look at this division, there were so many successful teams last year that they all have tough schedules, too. So the Lions and the Packers don't have an easy road as well. So at least the misery can love company in the NFC North. You talk about J.J. McCarthy, and that is, boy, it's almost unfair how much is on that guy's shoulders because everybody's raving about the roster, the talent around him at just about every position. People are talking about this Vikings defense, at least on paper, like they're the 85 Bears, that they could be one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. And we know that on the offensive side, there are weapons everywhere, including an upgraded offensive line. And if he can just be reasonably decent, the Vikings are a playoff team. But that pressure is pretty big. When you talk to people in training camp, I know they're saying all the right things, but Can you get a sense, like the look in people's eyes when they talk about McCarthy? Are they really as optimistic as they sound when they tell you all these glowing things about him? Or do you kind of look at it and say, I'm not so sure that they're sold on this guy quite yet? What's been your impression so far?
No, that's what I kind of answered to the first one, is that his teammates are glowing about him. They come over to us and want to talk to us about him. It's crazy, but I think here's the way the Vikings want to navigate this. They've added another running back, right? They beefed up the offensive line and defensive line. I think they see what Philadelphia has done the last couple of years and how they are one of the most physical lines in football. They knock you around. And I think what he wants to do with Jordan Mason and with Aaron Jones is that they want to take care of the football. And by doing that, I can see the Vikings really trying to become a running team, something that they've not done since Mike Zimmer was here with Dalvin Cook. I think they want to take the pressure off the kid by having a line that can, one, pass protect for him, but two, win the game by rushing the football. So many times we'd see the Vikings fail in red zone situations because they couldn't move the ball on the ground. This way, they feel by adding Mason, who's tougher than Aaron Jones in the short yardage situations, and by adding more offensive linemen that are veterans that have been through it, that I think that's how they're going to try to mitigate the pressure on McCarthy. So it's not all on him, because when it went south last year, the Vikings couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass the ball in that Detroit game and the Rams game. The offense was a disaster. And I think they said, all right, we've got to figure out to be a multifaceted offense.
Yeah, and Kevin O'Connell might break out in hives if he has to call like multiple running plays in a row. We know that guy wants to throw the ball, but
I know, that's what I'm saying.
You got to you got to make your living in a way that's going to help you win games. So I am with you with a young quarterback. Run the ball, play good defense, play action pass, give him some opportunities to be successful, and he's still got a really good crew of receivers like you talked about. I want to ask you about that left side of the offensive line. Christian Darrisaw returning from an injury that cost him a good share of last year, and no one's really known exactly what to expect, but it sounds like he's getting back into it a little bit and may be ready by opening day. And then next to him, Donovan Jackson, the first-round draft pick out of Ohio State. The Vikings have drafted a bunch of guards and centers in recent years, and they have not necessarily worked out. So between Darrisaw's injury and Jackson's inexperience, but high profile coming in, what do you think Vikings fans can expect from that left side of the line?
Well, Darrisaw yesterday, for the first time in pads, did all drills. He was in the 11-on-11, so that's a huge sign. And McCarthy has said that he has real confidence in Christian, really likes what he does. And O'Connell says as far as the health goes, he seems to be back where he was before the injury. So he doesn't see him as being a problem. He should be ready to go week 1 against the Bears on Monday Night Football. As far as the rookie, he's kind of protected. And by beefing up the center position, by getting a guy who's a veteran, I think they can kind of hide him and protect him. And if they need to chip that way or put a tight end on that side to help out, I think that's what they're going to do, because they've also have added, more tight ends that can block. And they want to be a physical team. I think they've realized, and the NFL kind of has realized this because of what the Eagles showed everybody, because it is. It's a copycat league, and once somebody wins, everybody goes, oh, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
Because everybody got away from the running back, got away from the running game because, well, it's way easier to throw the ball 7 yards than it is to try to block people to get your running back 7 yards. And so everybody thought that's the way the game was going. But now the Eagles showed them something else. And so the Vikings have added beef to that line. And I think the offensive line, I think, is going to be fine. Even though, you're going to have to spend some time getting the continuity of the guys when you have so many different pieces in there. But they're good. I don't have a problem there. I just think that, it's so much on McCarthy's plate, and you're also asking some guys, the free agents, the defense that you acquired. Last year, it couldn't have worked out better. Jonathan Grenard, all-pro. Andrew Van Ginkel. Nobody even knew who the heck the guy was. And he turns out to be an all-pro because of the way Flores ran it. So you look at how the team's been assembled, and I think that the lines should be a strong suit for the team. The back end of the defense, safeties, cornerbacks, that may be iffy, but if they could get home with the rush, it doesn't matter. You and I could be a safety because that guy will never get the ball off.
Right. Yeah, right. Speaking of pressure on the quarterback, Dallas Turner came in last year as a first-round draft pick and never quite found his way, but that's not all that uncommon for young players. So in year number 2, is this a guy that is going to be a major factor, do you think? Is he going to be a guy that contributes a little bit or a guy that gets buried on the depth chart?
Well, that's kind of what happened last year, right? You had Van Ginkel and you had Grenard, and he's like, all right, why are you going to sit those guys? They're right in the quarterback's face. And I think they would like to see more out of Turner and like to give him more on his plate so then they can keep Grenard and Van Ginkel fresh. So I'm not really sure why it went south for Turner last year, especially when you think about the price that the Vikings paid for him, right? They moved up in the draft and, first defensive player off the board, and everybody thought this guy's going to be all-world, and it just didn't pan out for him. So as far as the details as to why it went wrong, that's over my head. I can't figure that out, and nobody's really said much about it. But they're expecting more, but, it's wait-and-see attitude, right? We gotta see it to believe it. And I don't know. That the jury is out, because if he does turn out to be a miss, that's a big miss, because not only did you use that drift, you used other picks to get that guy. So hopefully it does pan out for the Vikings eventually.
Yeah. This is a weird year for me, Jim, looking at the Vikings. Usually I take a look at the team coming in, look at the schedule, and say, okay, I kind of think I have some idea what might happen. Now, the last few years I've been completely wrong on how things are going to go. They've generally outperformed what I thought they were going to do. This year, I have no idea what to expect just because that quarterback position is such a wild card. How about you? Are you able to say, I really think this is a team that's going to win X amount of games, or I've got this much in the way of expectations? You talked earlier about, the team and kind of where they might fit record-wise, but how much confidence do you have behind any of your presumptions for this year based on, the offense being run by a quarterback who's never really played?
Well, that is my biggest concern. And I'm really surprised at how the Vikings did not get a veteran backup quarterback. There were guys out there that they could have plugged in, especially when you see what O'Connell can do with guys. He turned Darnold into a washed-up quarterback, into, a guy who's now going to start in Seattle and get a big payday out of the deal. And they let Daniel Jones leave. And I thought Daniel Jones would be a perfect caddy for McCarthy. One, just because if he gets hurt, or two, he's ineffective and you need to bring him along slower. And that's not a rip on him. It's just some guys need more time to figure it out at this level. But they are all in on McCarthy. They let Aaron Rodgers go, and, we can debate that all day, whether that's you really want that guy around with his attitude or not. But, the skill he has, and to see him with this offense, that's why he was begging to come here, was because he saw how good this offense can be with the right quarterback. And so I'm surprised that they're going to go with Sam Howell. Maybe they'll jump on somebody that gets cut as camp goes on. But, we saw that a couple years ago when Kirk Cousins went down, and we had the traveling show of quarterbacks.
Yes.
And, we're back to the Pasternaut. So you'd think O'Connell would be smarter and Kwesi would be smarter than that to put all their eggs in that one basket, because everybody says this team has all the skill at all the positions and could really be a special team. And then you leave the most important position vulnerable by just going with a rookie, and you don't have a guy that I think could step in and be, a top-tier quarterback in this league. I think it's pretty risky.
Yeah. Very much so. Well, that's what makes it fun to watch, though, Jim, right? That's why people like us in the media have jobs. We get to talk about and speculate and wonder what's going to happen and then watch it all play out. So it'll be fun, as always, to see what the theater production looks like in the 2025 season. I appreciate your time so much, Jim. Thanks for doing it. All the best to you and your team as you cover the Vikings in the upcoming season.
Yeah, let's hope I'm wrong. Let's hope the 8 and 9 are wrong, and we can laugh about it when we're back to 14 wins and look at it winning the division title. That's what I'd rather prefer. I would like to be wrong.
Well,
100% on this one.
Yeah, like we always say, us old Vikings fans, just once before we die, give us that Super Bowl ring. I don't know if this will be the year, but you never quite know. Thanks a lot for taking the time, Jim. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You got it. Take care. Jim Rich, sports director at Fox 9 TV. When we come back, we're going to talk with Ross Uglum from Bison Report and from Packer Report, some of the NDSU players that are now in the NFL, and a word on those Green Bay Packers. That's next on the Purple and Gold preseason special. Welcome back to the Purple and Gold preseason special on WDAY Radio. Ross Uglum is a writer for the Bison Report and the Packer Report as well. One of the guys who really knows the game, and I love talking football with Ross when we get a chance to do that. We're going to take a look at some of the NDSU alum who figure to make an impact in the NFL this season. Ross, thanks for taking a few minutes here tonight.
Oh, for sure, Steve. Although if I'd known it was called the Purple and Gold Preview, I don't know if I would agree to that.
Yeah, Ross, a diehard Packer fan. Still somehow we're friends. I'm not sure how that works, but always good to go back and forth on Packers and Vikings, no doubt about that. So, so let's do some NDSU talk here. Tell us about a handful of the guys that have a chance to make impacts for their team this year.
For sure. I mean, with North Dakota State recently, you've definitely been focused on the offensive line. That's kind of where their success stories have come. I would guess any Bison fan would agree at this point that the quarterback stuff, while is still like unbelievably impressive, it has not gone maybe the way that folks would have hoped.
Mm-hmm.
For really, I mean, Easton Stick, I would say probably had the career I kind of thought he would have. And I'm super happy for him that he's still in the league and he's never going to want for money. And he keeps being able to be around the game he loves. And I think he's going to be a heck of a football coach when he's done doing what he's doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't think Trey's journey has gone the way he wanted and probably not Carson either. But the offensive line, Cody's going to start. I think Cordell is in a really interesting spot after getting benched for the first time in his career with Cincinnati, and what they've done to, kind of fortify one of, I think, really even casual fans, as little as casual fans pay attention to offensive line. Joe Burrow looking up at the sky happened enough where even casual fans understand that Cincinnati has a real need on the offensive line. So Cordell will be really, really interesting to pay attention to. They took a kid, Dylan Fairchild, out of Georgia with a top 100 pick that he's going to have to fight with in addition to former Packers center Lucas Patrick, he's a Duke guy that was an undrafted free agent that's smart and just hasn't found his way out of the league yet. So Cordell's in a really interesting spot. Gray Zabel is not. They're going to start him. You don't take an offensive lineman with that pick and not find a place to start him on the offensive line. Those are kind of some of the high points. And then, as a Packers guy, it's just we're on Watson watch. That's a big one. He's very, very important to that team. Maybe not as important in the box score as your Justin Jefferson or really even like a Jordan Addison. But as far as what he does to the geometry of that offense, it's unbelievable. I mean, the amount of gravity that he takes at 6'4", 220 when he gets running down the field, one of legitimately the fastest GPS players in the NFL, it just opens up so much underneath for his teammates. And, that ACL rehab is one of the top storylines in Green Bay, period.
Yeah, you talked about the quarterbacks and Trey Lance and Easton Stick. I think we've been so used to having Easton there with the Chargers that you're like, okay, there's a Bison quarterback there, but it's not that guy. And so Easton Stick now has moved on to another location. So in behind him comes Trey Lance, and he's going to get a chance. I think I heard to start tonight's Hall of Fame game there. So Trey Lance is kind of at a crossroads here. He's probably got to do something here in this opportunity to show that he can do something, or he may be a guy that just kind of bounces around, maybe hoping to stay on a practice squad somewhere.
Yeah, Trey, is interesting. I think if I was to remove, my relationships covering them here at NDSU, or for both of those guys, frankly, covering their recruitment, there's no question that Trey has more talent. And I think Easton would be offended if I didn't say that. I mean, Trey has gifts that Easton simply does not possess. Both of them are, however, NFL caliber quarterbacks and have shown that getting second and third contracts from teams. But, you know, Trey, you're right, is in an interesting position. Of course, he has a 0% chance to start, barring injury. Justin Herbert's one of the best 5 or 6 young quarterbacks in this league.
Yes.
And with that said, I mean, you know, Harbaugh, he's interesting, right? You throw all, you know, political opinions aside. He had Colin Kaepernick. He took Colin Kaepernick to a Super Bowl. You start to talk about just physical similarities and having a rocket arm and some speed. And not that Harbaugh hasn't done it with quarterbacks that are a little immobile as well, but you start to draw a line between mobile quarterbacks and he and Greg Roman, and it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to understand how he might use Trey in a situation where Easton Stick was thrown into. Justin Herbert rolled an ankle. Easton Stick, people may not remember, had to start NFL games, and the Chargers season was over at that point. But Easton Stick started real NFL football games, and in a situation where maybe LA's 4-2 and Trey needs to get them through a month, you can really start drawing up what a guy like Harbaugh might do for a player like Trey.
Yes. Yeah. Really good point. Couple of offensive linemen that I want to get an update on: Billy Turner and Dylan Radens. Dylan Radens was a 2nd-round pick of the Titans. He's now in New Orleans, and Billy Turner's kind of bounced around a little bit, but he's still finding ways to stay in the league and getting opportunities. What do you expect from those 2 guys this year?
Right now, I don't know that Billy is on a team. I do remember seeing Billy, if not this most recent pro day, at the last one. And while, you know, obviously I think he was in support. A lot of the former pros come back for pro day. That's not odd by any stretch. I think he's no idiot. And I think that as many NFL personnel that you can say what's up to when you're a capable offensive lineman in a league that doesn't have that many, I think that's important. So, you know, I have not talked to Billy. I could maybe ask Marcus Williams, who's now a defensive analyst. Saw Marcus yesterday at NDSU's practice. That's pretty cool. Another former Bison great helping out this collegiate program we have here in Fargo. But no formal retirement announcement yet from Bill. Dylan is, I think, going to play guard, and that's where I think he's had the most NFL successes as a guard. He's a capable tackle, but I think he's had a little bit more success as a guard, and he's with the New Orleans Saints, who have a FCS vibe in that offensive line room. Most recently, spending a very, very high pick on Northern Iowa's Trevor Penning, although that has not gone particularly well. And I would say Titans fans, unfortunately, would probably say the same thing about the Dylan pick. It just hasn't gone the way that everybody kind of hoped and foresaw.
Yeah. Want to ask you about Christian Watson. He's an immensely talented player, high draft pick for the Packers, and he's just had those injury issues time after time, and they continue to draft receivers in Green Bay. What is the projection for Christian Watson? What do you think happens with him this year with the Pack?
Yeah, Christian came in to Green Bay with another receiver out of the University of Nevada by the name of Romeo Doubs. Doubs has been a decent player. Really, when Jordan Love started that first playoff game of his, I don't think Christian was available for that one. And he and Romeo Doubs just lit the place up. Both of those guys are going into the final year of their deal because neither of them were first-round picks. Neither of them have a contract extension. So Green Bay goes in, takes Matthew Golden, breaks a 23-year-long streak of not taking a wide receiver in the first round. People assume that they're, are kind of a replacement there, and then use a third-round pick on TCU's Savion Williams, who's really more of, as far as my opinion goes, that Cordarrelle Patterson kick returner, jet sweep, hand it off to him, just find a way to get the ball in his hands, as far in contrast to, I'm going to route you up, beat you over the top, run a 15-yard in, beat you on a slant, those types of things. And you could definitely see one of Dobbs or Watson meshing with this new group that also includes third-year guys, Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed, but you can't see both. They're not both going to get re-signed. And so they're both get second contracts. I mean, basically no matter what happens to Dobbs or Christian, someone is going to sign them after this year. But as far as staying in Green Bay, it's going to be one or the other. I personally think what Golden and Watson could do together could be very special. I kind of think Dobbs' skill set is somewhat similar to Wicks, and they can get a lot out of Wicks that they got out of Dobbs, a lot of the same routes, a lot of the same roles within the offense. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, he's got to come back quickly. He's got to come back strong. And then it's you got to thread the needle because, you know, if he comes back in week 5 and has 900 yards, well, that's pacing for an 1,100-yard season. And now somebody wants to give him $20 million a year. Green Bay's not going to do that. Or if he gets re-injured, now it's, okay, is anybody going to give me $5 million a year? Who is my next team? Who's willing to take a chance? So it's going to be fascinating to me if you're cheering for, which I am obviously, if you're cheering for Christian Watson to have his second contract come from the Packers. How do you thread that needle? What level of success does Christian have, and what kind of financial compensation does that lead to when you're paying your quarterback $55 million a year, which is what they ended up doing?
Yeah, out until I think they're saying maybe November with that ACL recovering. Ross, does that sound right about November return?
Not anymore. There are videos out of him cutting. He's doing sprints on the sideline. He's running around.
Okay, good.
Rousing up the crowd. I expect him honestly to be ready to go in late September, and then it's just kind of what will they do?
Yeah.
You know, what level of caution will Green Bay proceed with? The Packers, a little bit unlucky this year, ended up with a super early bye week. Maybe point your finger at that. They have an early bye week. Could Christian come back after the early bye week? But this talk of Halloween, I think, is nonsense.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion based on conversations I've had, videos I've seen, and reports from training camp. I don't think there's any way this kid is 3 months away from playing.
All right. Well, good. Well, we're all pulling for him to get back and kind of hit that next level that I think everybody knows that he has, and we're just waiting definitely to see it. Before I let you go, Ross, got to get a comment from you about the NFC North. Again, a very solid division. I've seen in pretty much all of the power rankings from ESPN, NFL.com, Fox Sports, they've got the Packers somewhere in that 5 to 10 range. So I think everybody's expecting that they should be a playoff team this year, but Minnesota could be there as well if J.J. McCarthy can fill that void. They've got a good roster around him. Detroit loses both of their coordinators, but they've got a lot of talent back on that side in that team as well. Chicago, who knows, a second year for Caleb Williams as the quarterback there. One of the best divisions in football. How do you see it breaking down, Ross?
I think anybody probably but Chicago at this point, and even them, you can make a case. I mean, if those two Indianapolis Colts on the interior of Minnesota's defense or offensive line can hold up, they're such a cataclysmic upgrade from what was there before. And, you know, I mean, then it's all, if your quarterback stinks, you're out of luck. And I'm not predicting that J.J. McCarthy is going to stink. I'm just saying if that ends up being the case, I don't care about T.J. Hawkinson and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. It's not going to matter. So that's the big red flag there. Caleb Williams, if he continues to freelance, especially within as much structure as Ben Johnson likes, that could be a disaster. Green Bay, they finished the season 2-4. I mean, they won 11 games, but they finished the season 2-4. That could be not so great. And then you mentioned the Lions, you know, losing both coordinators. They went out within the playoffs with a whimper again. Mm-hmm. I wonder how everybody loves Dan Campbell. I don't know if being that much of a full throttle kind of meathead type coach works for 20 weeks. I don't know. Like, I don't know that he'll never win the big one, but I don't know, when you ramp it up and you get to training camp and you're on 11 and you stay on 11 until Christmas, I don't know if guys are wired like that anymore. And so those are all the negative aspects, but the positive aspects are simply, these are 4 of probably the most 8 or 9 talented teams in the NFC.
Yeah.
From a talent perspective, they're that good. And this division could be that fun.
Yeah, it should be great theater. And you may not have a team come out of there with 14, 15 wins like we saw last year, but you definitely are going to see some good football. Ross, we appreciate you taking the time. Great to catch up with you. Thanks for the intel tonight.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Our program tonight brought to you by BalanceCPA. More than just accountants, they're trusted business partners committed to your success. ND Estate Services, say goodbye to unnecessary taxes, avoid probate, and make sure your family's future is secure. ATI Diesel, your diesel truck experts, and Premier Building Systems, family owned with years of experience. When we come back, Devin Fry from Valley News Live stops by. We'll preview the NFC North and make some predictions too before we finish up here tonight. You're listening to the Purple and Gold preseason special on WDAY. Welcome back to the Purple and Gold preseason special here on WDAY Radio. Thank you to our sponsors, BalanceCPA, ND Estate Services, ATI Diesel, and Premier Building Systems. Well, Devin Fry from Valley News Live is here in studio with me to preview the NFC North and do a few predictions. Devin, thanks for stopping by, my man. Good to see you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It's a blast to come out here. I love your guys' setup so much. Anytime I get to visit here, it's awesome.
Well, we're spoiled. We're pretty lucky, that's for sure. Devin played high school and then college football at Mayville State University. Go Comets.
Go Comets, represent. Exactly.
So this guy knows a little bit of ball, and I've got my Vikings purple. He's got his Saints black and gold.
Yes, sir.
How did you become a Saints fan?
Well, I grew up in Salta, Alaska, so I have no allegiance. My pro teams are all over the place anyway. I am a Toronto Raptors fan for basketball.
Okay.
So it's everywhere. But I was a fan of USC football first because I watched them win the Rose Bowl every year.
Yeah.
And so, the Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush was my favorite athlete of all time. The Saints drafted Reggie Bush, and I was at a young enough age where I was like, that's my favorite team now. That's all they had to do. Reggie Bush didn't play a whole lot for the Saints, but he made me a Saints fan.
He didn't have to play for long, right?
He decided the years of pain that I had to endure, and the Super Bowl, which was nice, but I didn't have to be a Saints fan. There's probably a lot of Saints fans who are jealous of how little I had to be a Saints fan before they won a Super Bowl, but it was like what, 3-4 years. But
this could be an interesting year for your team.
That's a good way.
A lot of question marks, and Tyler Shugg, the quarterback out of Louisville, looks like he's going to be the guy to be the starter there, but we don't really know who the starting pitcher is going to be for that team for a while.
Well, and it's interesting too because Shugg actually had a holdout going into camp. He was like the last second rounder to sign. Was Tyler Shugg, and so it was like, okay, is this going to be our starting quarterback? Because like his pick drew a lot of ire from Saints fans anyway. Trust me, I'm unfortunately all over Saints social media, and so a lot of people, me included, will make a Rattler push, but Rattler also kind of had a little bit of an opportunity last year. We'll see what happens there. It's a coin flip at this point. It's not like I think there's a whole lot going on around the quarterback position for New Orleans this year anyway, but they did unveil 2 new sweet-looking uniforms, though. So we're going to be like the best looking. We're going to be the best looking 4-win team of the league.
You go.
You'll see.
Well, let's talk about some teams that might win more than 4 this year. Let's take a look at first of all the NFC North. You've got the Lions. Last year, Lions 15-2, Vikings 14-3, Packers 11-6, Bears 5-12. Any reason to think the division looks markedly different from that this year?
I still do think the majority are going to be double-digit win teams. I really do think that there's a lot of opportunity there because a lot of them didn't lose a whole lot, but also improved, and they shored up in positions that really matter for your success. Not a lot of sexy signings, but a lot of offensive line signings, especially in Minnesota. And I think that's huge for Minnesota, especially when you're seeing what J.J. McCarthy can do now. We're going to get him out there, and it's his team now. You got to protect that guy. And I think it was 2 offensive line signings, and I believe,
and a draft pick.
And a draft pick there.
And then on the defensive line, on the 2 end positions, you've got new guys coming in. Jonathan Allen, the former Washington Commander, and then you've got on the other side Javon Hargrave, the former 49er. So the Lions are very different than what they started out as last year.
I think Hargrave might be the most underrated signing of the offseason.
Yeah, he's been a little banged up last couple of years, but if he can revert to the form he had 3-4 years ago, he could be a great player for them. So my biggest question mark with this whole team is Chicago. They bring in Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator with the Lions, and that, by the way, is its own storyline. The Lions lose Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, and Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. But Ben Johnson goes to Chicago, a great mind. Can Caleb Williams execute what Ben Johnson would like him to do? Because they have now been able to stock up a couple 3 years, some pretty good talent. They should be better than a 5-win team this year.
Should be, and they're another group that really shored things up front as well. They also, for a young quarterback like Caleb Williams, I'm blanking on his name right now, but they brought in a tight end that has done really well through camp. And when you have that kind of option at a position like tight end for a young quarterback to just kind of dump things off to at any point, or like in Ben Johnson's systems, the tight end is a very important factor there. And so if Caleb has that to fall back on, Caleb's always had the raw ability. It's kind of getting around the NFL aspect of the game. And he had moments where he shined last year, but again, it came down to the offensive line, and Caleb was, I believe, the most sacked quarterback in the league last year.
Yeah, Cole Kmet is their guy, but Colston Loveland, the draft pick out of Michigan, came in, and they're going to probably run multiple tight ends there in that set. That'll be interesting to watch. If you had to pick a winner out of the NFC North, I think you still probably have to say Detroit, but the Vikings or the Packers could give them a run for their money.
And Green Bay is another team that they're interesting because they improved on some of the sexy positions. I think Matthew Golden's a great draft pick for them
at receiver.
Yeah, giving Jordan Love some more weapons there. Like I said, most of the NFC North teams really had to shore things up front. The Packers needed to give their quarterback some more weapons, and I don't think Christian Watson's going to be out as long as what has been predicted.
In fact, in our last segment, Ross Uglum said that he's been looking pretty much full speed, and they don't think it's going to be maybe a couple 3 weeks, but they get an early bye coming up. That might be the time. So we'll see what happens there.
I think that could be a big difference maker for them. Is how often their weapons are able to play and how much they're able to rely on those options that Jordan Love has back there.
So you've got Vikings, Packers, the Lions all kind of in the mix there. Where do you think, we'll just kind of transition to some Vikings talk here, where do you think Minnesota ends up? What does their year look like? A lot of well-known commodities and then a quarterback that we have no idea.
That's in the NFL, that's such a difference maker. In college, you can really get away with having a quarterback that's not quite at the same level as the players around him. You can kind of carry a quarterback to that position. The NFL relies so much on the pass and how well the quarterback plays. So how quickly J.J. McCarthy picks these things up, which he has shown no signs that that's going to be an issue, but he hasn't had that real game experience yet. And so we'll see what J.J. is able to do, but it all really kind of falls back to him. I think Detroit still wins the North, but I certainly think Minnesota could get that second spot out of the North. It's going to be a battle with Green Bay, but I think a wild card bid for Minnesota is definitely not out of the question. But again, with the weapons that they have for J.J. McCarthy and the protection that they've been trying to provide him on the offensive front with some of the signings that they made in the free agency, it all just depends on how quickly he picks this game up. Yeah. And so far, he's shown no signs that he's going to have any delays there, but you never know. The
Lions have had one of the best offensive lines in football for years, but they did have a couple players that left in free agency, and so they've got a couple things to figure out there. Still certainly a very good offensive cast of skill position players. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is maybe the most electric running back in the league.
He's scary.
He is really, really fun to watch, and they just keep finding ways to get it done. But as we've seen so often, it's not easy. Philadelphia saw this when they replaced coordinators. You can't just plug in any old guy and expect that offense to hum along right off the top. So we'll see what happens there. Should be an interesting watch for the Lions, but they are going to be definitely dangerous this year. Let's take a look at the NFC as a whole there. You've got some, with the teams you're talking about here, with the Vikings, Lions, and Packers, you've got some good ones here. And then coming back very soon. Okay, Dean Wysocki says Bears are winning the division. Dean has been drinking apparently early on here tonight, but we appreciate the sentiments there, Dino. In the NFC, you've got to have the Eagles up there again, the defending Super Bowl champs. They're going to be certainly a force to be dealt with. I think you've got the Eagles, the Lions probably, if you had to say, that's probably where you start with the powerhouses there, and then you bring in teams like the Vikings, the Packers, maybe the Commanders. Tampa Bay could have a very good season. They've boosted their defense a little bit and a lot of offensive guys back there as well. So I don't know. If you had to put money down, who are your best two teams? I'd go with Philadelphia and Detroit. Anybody else you'd put in that upper echelon in the North or in the NFC?
I would probably throw the 49ers a line in there. Just they've been kind of quiet this offseason, which is frankly good. If
Not
you're them,
bad.
The Brandon Ayuk situation, that's going to get itself sorted out by the end of the preseason here. So Christian McCaffrey's coming into the year fully healthy. I don't necessarily believe in Brock Purdy to the level that clearly the 49ers do with how much they're paying him. But I do think that the 49ers are still going to be as good as the Rams. Also are going to be a playoff team. So I think the NFC West is actually pretty interesting this year between those two teams. I think there's quite a drop off between them and Seattle than Arizona. But
yeah, you've got in the AFC, you've got some really good football teams.
Yeah.
Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City. Those three are going to be really tough again this year. Anybody else in that next group? Maybe a Cincinnati. I think they'll be better this year. Can they join the ranks of that top three? I don't think they've got the defense necessarily to do that. The Chargers are going to be interesting to watch, but anybody else that you'd put in that same company with Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City?
I do just want to mention, like, I've said this every year, but if Baltimore is going to break through, it's going to have to be this year because that window keeps shrinking for Baltimore. But you mentioned Cincinnati. They didn't do a whole lot up front. Again, and that's going to be another issue that's been plaguing them the entire Joe Burrow era. But they've signed every receiver that they needed to. They gave T. Higgins a lot of money.
When you get Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow, that's going to take so much of your money.
Exactly, yeah, and they divided it all that way, and so I don't have a lot of faith in Cincinnati there. But no, the drop off in the AFC from I'm curious to see what happens in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
the Aaron Rodgers experiment. We'll see what happens there. The Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf led offense. Kind of
better talent on offense than they've had.
But yeah, I really there's quite the drop off between that Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore grouping, and then it just kind of seems to go a little bit from there. Miami's another one that interests me. You never know what happens with Tua any given year, and they're another team that's been kind of quiet through this offseason period. So curious to see what happens down in Miami as well.
Well, let's start narrowing this down here a little bit. Out of the NFC, who makes the NFC title game?
So we got the final two, and again, this is all just like Philadelphia is going to be one of them at this point, just because I kind of feel like they are.
Philly and
I'm going to go chalk here. Philly and Detroit.
Okay. Yep. In the AFC, who have you got in the final two?
I see it. I feel like Buffalo or Baltimore, one of those two, and we'll just go with Baltimore.
All
then I can't not say Kansas City. I know this is all chalk, but it's the preseason.
I don't disagree with any of that so far. All right, since this is the Vikings preseason special, what do the Vikings do in 10 seconds?
What do the Vikings do? I believe they reached the playoffs this year. You're going to see some good things from J.J. McCarthy in his first real NFL action. That's my prediction.
12-5, they make the NFC title game and lose to somebody better than them.
Oh, I like that.
So there we go. All right, thanks again to BalanceCPA, ND Estate Services, ATI Diesel, and Premier Building Systems. Should be a great and fun season. Take care, everybody.